questions so far about anything?
This isn't directly for this, but when I'm going over the study guide, there's some questions that are just like a little confusing on how you want the answer. Like one that I had last night was like explaining the structures that create the blood-brain barrier. Like I'm just wondering like how specific you are looking for those answers to be.
The structures that would create the blood-brain barrier, if you remember, those were the astrocytes connecting to the blood vessels.
Okay.
Those are the structures.
Okay, so that's as specific as it needs to be. Okay.
Yeah.
And also, the ascending and descending tracks, is the gray matter the ascending and the white matter is the descending? Because I remember in that picture there were parts of the white matter that were ascending and descending, but you also said we don't need to be as specific as to know each and every one.
Right. So in the grand scheme of things, the ascending are the gray, descending are the white.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
Yep. Okay. All right. So let's pick up then where we left off and hopefully get chapter 15 completed. And I've been thinking about chapter 16, and chapter 16 is our special senses. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the chapter is relatively long in the textbook. However, in the grand scheme of things and tests that you're going to go take, okay, that's probably not going to be something that's very well emphasized, okay? So what I plan to do, I want to put together the information that will be important for you to be familiar with as you go into your programs. And you guys can let me know if you want to complete chapter 16 in a couple of ways. First, we can get into some of that great detail, okay? But in reality, there's just certain things in that chapter you need to know. And we could choose to do an at-home quiz to complete for just chapter 16. And that means, now note my terminology, an at-home quiz that you get to complete, okay, on chapter 16, and I can count that as a test grade. I could use that to add, make it 6 tests rather than 5, I think, which decreases percentages for each test. And it's an at-home quiz that you would get to complete for 16. Or we can do the other way where, okay, we're going to get into a little more detail, something that's probably you are probably not going to encounter a whole lot of anyway, okay? And then we can add it to the next test. Option A or option B?
A sounds good.
Option A? All in favor? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. So that's how we will handle chapter 16. So and we'll move on into 17, which gets a little more interesting and a little more topic full for what you'll encounter on tests and everything that you've got to take to get into your programs. Okay. All right. So let's pick up on 15 where we left off. We left off looking at this picture, and in this picture it was talking about the routes that the autonomic nervous system can take to make it to its target organ, its target tissue. So if you remember, we took each one of these little routes marked in green, and we followed the path they could take, okay? So that was pretty much the point that we had made it through with the chapter 15. So we're picking up at one of the parts that we looked at for this division, because remember, we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, and we're looking at these two divisions, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And one of the things that we looked at was how we had these ganglia. And remember, ganglia are going to be areas of nerve cell bodies, okay? And because this is the autonomic nervous system, they create the chain ganglia, if you remember. And then we had some of these ganglia that we looked at that are running like the length of the abdominal aorta. Then we had like some collateral ganglia that were out here in like the abdomen area, okay? So when we look at this picture right here, these ganglia, they're contributing to a network that is going to be called the abdominal aortic plexus. So if you remember the term plexus, that means a grouping of something, okay? This is letting us know that it is the abdominal aorta where we're going to find some of these groupings, okay, some of these ganglia. So it's wrapping around the abdominal aorta, and if you look at the picture, can you kind of see how they're showing the ganglia and then what looks like the little nerves wrapping around that aorta? This is what it's referring to. The major collateral ganglia in this area, we've got that celiac, the superior mesenteric, and inferior mesenteric. So if you look at this picture, superior is, if you look over here on the right-hand side, the third word down. And if you look, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh for inferior mesenteric. And then if you look over to the left, the celiac ganglia is the third termed down. So that is making up this network. Now, do you remember how we mentioned we have a pre-ganglionic fiber, the one that works through that chain, okay? Then we have to have it synapse in one of these ganglia, and the post fiber goes to the target area. So those post fibers, now look what they get to do. They get to accompany arteries of the same name to get to their target organ. Because if they're there off of the abdominal aorta, branching that occurs, the nerve fibers can continue along that route. In this part of the makeup of the body, in this abdominal region, the abdominal cavity, when we look at how we have this network, the celiac, the one that we saw on the left, being named, superior over on the right, and then nerves that are radiating from them, they make up our solar plexus. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yep.
Okay. What happens if someone gets hit really hard in that area? They took a punch to the solar plexus. Most of the time, that puts them down, okay? This is the reason why they're taking that hit to these ganglia and these nerve fibers, and that will affect the target organs. So those target organs are going to be like, oh, whoa, they had like a reset, okay? So that person usually goes down. So when we check out these ganglia, this wrapping that will occur around this abdominal aorta, our celiac, superior, we're getting that solar plexus. Something else to note, this is where there is an extreme blood flow. Okay, so the blood flow, this vascularization to these arteries is high. To these nerves is high. So we have a very well supplied area of the body. When we're seeing these nerves, one of the things that we say in the sympathetic division, divergence predominates. So, what this is telling me, if I think back to my sympathetic division, okay, and if I'm looking at my nerve fibers in this picture, and if I'm taking my terms apart, and if I'm looking at my pre-ganglionic fibers, the branches, so in other words, one of these pre-fibers could synapse on 10 to 20 post fibers. So basically, one fiber can do this number and touch a lot of the post fibers, because this is my sympathetic division. This is my division that is going to get the body ready for fight or flight. So it is carrying a lot of information that one pre can go whoop, diverge, because what happens if you converge? All of this does this number. Okay, so that one pre-fiber can do that number and touch a whole lot of post fibers and get them activated, because this is my sympathetic division. So we are targeting multiple areas of the body. So when the sympathetic division kicks in, like it said, it is a widespread effect, because it's got to get skeletal muscle ready, the respiratory system, it's got to get the cardiovascular system, it's got to shut down digest. It's got a lot of stuff to do to get us ready for the fight or flight. Huh?
Do the points of snaps ever move, or are they always going to be set at the same places?
They're always going to be the same, unless there has been nerve damage. The only time that would be different is if there's been nerve damage to any parts of either the pre or the post.
Would they be medically repositioned, or would they automatically just go towards healthy tissue or axon dendrites?
Probably not manually manipulated, because that would be, you would actually have to get to the direct fibers of the spinal cord. So I would say that manually, no. Now, if there was trauma, if there was any type of maybe physical condition that the child might have been born with, yes, there could be some